With the 43rd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the New York Football Giants select WanDale Robinson, wide receiver from Kentucky. Let's go.
After much shaking and baking, the Giants have landed another offensive weapon. This is Big Blue Draft Night Live, presented by Verizon. I'm Paul Dottino. I'm along with the Super Bowl champions, Sean O'Hara and David Deal. Thank you so much for joining us as the Giants have finally made a pick here in the second round of the National Football League draft. Now, fellas, let's get right to it because this guy is so quick. If we don't talk about him, he might disappear.
Yeah, too hot to handle, too cold to hold, to go along with your shake and bake. Wan'Dale Robinson. Listen, this guy is an unbelievable athlete, and I think for the Giants, good things come to those who wait. We had to sit here and wait as they traded back, but this guy is an explosive slot receiver. I tell you what he does after the catch is pretty remarkable. And when you watch film on him, look, he rarely does the first guy take him down. So I think the Giants got an electric offensive player. They got a weapon that Brian Daboll now can use. He can do a lot of things. He can be a running back. He can be a slot receiver. Very explosive in space. So this is a great pickup for Daniel Jones and for this offense. Dave, I know we love having these guys that can handle all the gadgets. They can get on the perimeter. This guy can do it all.
Oh, no doubt about it. We are talking about Mr. Football for the state of Kentucky and the Gatorade Player of the Year for 2018. So people knew what type of athlete that he was coming out of the state of Kentucky. Spent 2 years at Nebraska, went through the portal transfer. Now as we see him in Kentucky, we know that this was an offense that spread the football around. He was not only utilized out of the slot, but out of the backfield running the football. So when you think about the Kadarius Toney coming back and when you think about Sterling Shepard's injury, that's where you think about this movement and Robinson being a key piece for this offense in 2022.
You mentioned Sterling Shepard, David. I think that's very important because coming back from an Achilles late last season is a really sticky thing. Now, we've seen him around the facility. We know he's progressing well, but this is really an insurance policy.
No doubt about it. You want to make sure that you have your best offense and best players out on the field. And we know that the Giants long-term believe in Sterling Shepard. But at the same time, when this rollout of 2022 comes out and week one with this team, it's got to come out strong, and you've got to have your best players out there, regardless of it's whether to injury or not.
Yeah, I think this is an exciting pick for this Giants offense. When you look at the measurables, all right, he's 5'8", 178 pounds. So on paper, you look at him, okay, is this guy undersized? Is he a smaller guy? He's a physical guy. Yep. And I think when you look at the fact that he's not a 6'3", 220-pound receiver, you might think, all right, can this guy handle the load? Can he break tackles? No doubt about it, he's got some power. I had a chance to talk to him a couple weeks ago, and his dad actually trains guys at a gym. And I tell you, I went over, I kind of put my arm on him, and this guy, I mean, he's thick, he is strong. I talked to him, some of his favorite players were Percy Harvin and Steve Smith, so he's got that kind of mentality to him. So I think for the Giants, this is going to be an electric player to add to this offense. They're going to find all kinds of ways to get him the football, but it's after he gets the football in his hands. You mentioned he was Mr. Kentucky.
Yeah.
Running back. He had over 2,000 yards his senior year, 28 touchdowns, 1,300 yards receiving his last year at Kentucky. So he knows what to do with the football in his hands. Those are the kind of guys that you can't have enough of.
104 receptions this past season. That was third in the country. So I have to tell you, there's no question about his productivity. You could talk all you want about the size of his body, but he's got a lot of heart. Let's go to the press conference right now and catch what the Giants have to say.
Out of Kentucky, good football player we've had our eye on. Again, generator with the ball in his hand, very good run after the catch, very good route runner, can separate. And, for what we're going to do offensively, we thought he'd be a very good fit for us.
Did you go into this day thinking, I want to trade down?
Yes.
And the reason for that is what?
We just thought it was what was best for us, at this time. More picks would benefit us the most, we thought, based on who was on our board.
So if you stayed at 36, would he have been the pick there, or did guys kind of come off in between?
We had deals in place before we even got to 30, like before the draft started, so we were confident. I mean, we knew we could move back, so that was part of the plan.
Both deals were in place, or?
We had a couple deals in place, and then the one at 38 wasn't necessarily in place, but it was something that we talked about we'd potentially be able to do, and then we were able to do it. So.
Seems to have a similar type of skill set to Kadarius. Does bringing him in impact Kadarius?
Is that a bad thing?
No, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just asking, does it impact his future?
Yeah, no. You guys saw Kadarius. take as many of those guys as we can on the field. I mean, again, he's a generator. When the ball's in his hands, he's got run after catch. You know, he can separate from DBs. He gets open. He played some running back at Nebraska. This is a versatile piece you can use in your offense. And I think if you look at some of the other guys, just how you can use them. And if you look at Dayball's past, or you look at Kafka's past, and in terms of the creativeness in their offense and the weapons that they can utilize, I think you can kind of see what the vision may look like.
Brian, is he the kind of guy that you think of right now? You start thinking, okay, this, all different pieces already?
Yeah, I think you do that when you evaluate all these prospects, is make sure they're a fit for your team, whether that's a receiver or a guy that plays in the back end, an up front guy, is what can they do for you? And like Joe mentioned, versatile, he's got quickness, explosiveness. He's tough even for a smaller guy. Been a very productive player, really going back to high school when he played there in Kentucky. So guy we're anxious to get our hands on and work with and implement into our scheme.
You're not going to be able to coach him bigger. Is his size a concern?
I mean, I've coached a lot of small guys. Deion Branch, Super Bowl MVP, Isaiah McKenzie last year. I mean, your job as a receiver is to get open and catch the ball, however that may be. Some guys are, quicker. Some guys are faster. Some guys are bigger. But if they can find a way to generate and get open, then you use their skill set to the best of your ability.
Joe, the question is going to be, especially after what was out there with Kadarius recently, would this potentially affect his future with the team at all? Did you view it that way?
No, we like the player, and like I said, if he can be like Kadarius when he's on the field and he's healthy, then we'll take as many of those guys as we can. So, yeah, no.
Yeah, Kadarius has had a good week.
Did you expect Robinson to be available for you at this point?
We were hoping so. Yeah, that was kind of part of the, when we looked at certain players that may be there, he was a guy we thought could potentially be there, and very clear vision for the player, and look forward to utilizing him.
Brian, did you say Kadarius had a good week? Is that what
Yeah, I said Kadarius had a good week. It was good to see him. Jumped right in and chugging along.
Have you shut the door on trying to trade him?
We were not shopping Kadarius Toney.
You're not going to trade him?
Just reflect on what I just said.
Right.
Yeah.
A cornerback went right before you made a pick.
A who?
A cornerback. Mm-hmm. Was he someone that was on your radar? It seemed like a guy that would, fit with the need and things like that.
Yeah, he's a guy we spent time on, and good football player. It was Minnesota that took him. But yeah, no, we're happy with who we got in Wan'Dale.
You do trade down like that. I mean, you're gonna, you got a bunch of guys circled. You're gonna miss this guy, right? Because that's just the way it is. So did you have like 4 or 5 guys, and you said we're good with all these guys?
We had a bunch of guys circled. Some needs that we need to address. So we're working on that, and we'll continue to work on that through tonight and tomorrow.
Joe, not that you're
shopping those picks, Joe? When you were shopping those picks?
I was shopping picks. Yes, shopping. That's something I was shopping.
Were you surprised that there weren't many quarterback teams coming up for quarterbacks?
Yeah, when teams call you and they want to make moves, you don't really know what you can speculate, but you don't really know what they're coming up for. So we did get some calls from teams from further back today, and we speculated that may be what it was, but you never really know what they're coming up for. So you just have to be, hey, these are the players, this is how many picks I'm moving back, and there's a chance you're going to lose a couple of these players. Is there still going to be somebody there that you're happy with? So that's kind of what we take into account when we do consider moving back, who may or may not be there.
You had all day to see how the board fell. It's only one quarterback. When the first round, did you give any thought to taking a quarterback in the second round? Just value?
No, we didn't.
Two more real quick.
Have teams been unwilling to trade picks next year? It seems like there hasn't been a lot of deals involving 2023 picks.
Yeah, it's come up in a couple conversations, but it was moves that really didn't make sense for us. It wasn't a win for us by any means in those conversations that we had.
You guys both saw McKenzie, the way he grew up in Buffalo. Is Wan'Dale somebody like that? I mean, do you see similarities to what you guys were able to do with McKenzie?
Yeah, I hate to compare guys from one system to the next. I understand the question, relative to their size and some of their abilities. I'm just anxious to get him in here. He had good production on his college tape, and a guy that we thought we could utilize. Some of it will probably be like Isaiah, I would assume, but I don't want to say that's for certain until we get him in the building. But he was excited. It was a good call.
Brian, is this kid Robinson a slot, or is he slot outside too, or what?
Yeah, I think he can do both. I think he can play inside, and I think he's strong enough and fast enough, even though he's a smaller, shorter guy, that he can contribute outside too. Again, what we're trying to do is putting many generating pieces out there to create space and stretch the field, whether it be vertical or horizontally. And this is another good guy that has ability to run after catch, which is an important aspect of it. And again, receivers, and I understand the questions about they come in all different shapes. There's big, tall guys that can make unbelievable contested catches. There's shorter, quicker guys that give them 5 yards and they're going to create separation. And ultimately our job is to figure out what we have here between KG and KT and Shep, and it's we got to figure out our pieces and put them in the right spot. Slate.
He had a bunch of drops, didn't he? I mean, do you see something with his hands or something he can fix? Or?
I think he's got good hands. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You've just heard the words of General Manager Joe Shane and, of course, Brian Daboll, the Giants' new head coach, as they talk about Wan'Dale Robinson, a 5'8", 178-pound wide receiver out of Kentucky who runs a 4.44. He becomes pick number 43 of this year's NFL draft, the Giants' second-round selection. Now, one thing that everybody said, Sean and David both, when Brian Daboll came over and he named Mike Kafka his offensive coordinator, we're talking about two offenses that love speed burners. It's clear the Giants are collecting roadrunners here.
Yeah, I think that's the fastest way to manipulate a defense. And for Brian Daboll, look, he had it with Stephon Diggs up in Buffalo, with Cole Beasley in the slot, Emmanuel Sanders, even Davis. They had a lot of good receivers. So to have a guy that can create separation, you're seeing the space right now. Look at that. There's not even a corner or a safety in the screen right there as he catches the ball. So the separation skill is there. You heard Brian Daboll just talk about how, look, we feel like he's not just a slot receiver. Here he is doing damage in the slot on a simple post route. They said he could play outside. He's strong enough. He's tough enough. So I think that's big. Obviously, Brian Daboll wants to move him around. And anytime you can have a versatile wide receiver like that, it definitely helps your offense. And it helps when you're calling plays if you have a guy that you can move around and you know that he can handle whatever the coverage is, whether it's zone, whether it's press man.
The things that we heard out of this press conference were speed, toughness, and the ability to be versatile. Those are all things that you love coming out of a player that you're going to draft into your offense. When we think about his size, it may be small, but people have to remember when he was that Mr. Football coming out of the university or coming out of the state of Kentucky, he had offers to Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State to play running back at those schools. So don't let his size be a factor that you may think that it may be too small. But also, when you have players like this that you can catch and put the ball in stride into their football hands, now all of a sudden you're using those guys in an extension of the run game. Now all of a sudden you're getting easy yardage on first and second down, and now you're not chasing the chains on third down. That's what these dynamic receivers bring to your offense.
Well, and also at a guy who's 5'8", if you're going to use him at all on a gadget, an end sweep, or one of those jet sweep kind of deals, as offensive lineman, you know he can sneak behind you. Defenders aren't going to have a good time trying to find him.
No, and you could just see that last highlight we showed. It was a jet sweep. It was an end around, and what you have a guy with speed like that can get to the perimeter. Now all of a sudden it really stresses the corners and the safeties, because if you got a guy that can get on the edge, the defensive linemen are out, the linebackers are out. Now you force the corners to have to make tackles in space. So I think to your point, Dave, look, this guy was a former running back, so he knows what to do with the football in his hand. He's got great vision, and you can see on the highlights, he's not dancing around. I know we started this off with shake and bake, but he's not dancing around trying to make people miss. He's running by people. He's a one-cut guy, and you could see that on some of the highlights. I think this guy's going to be excited. He wore blue in college.
Oh.
Now he's wearing giant blue, so I think this is going to be a good fit.
All right, let's talk about what happened before this pick, because this is how the Giants landed this wide receiver out of Kentucky. First up, the Giants were supposed to be picking at number 36 overall here in the second round. They send that pick to the Jets for pick number 38 and a fifth-round pick this year, number 146. But they were not done. They continued to turn the wheel and then traded number 38 to the Falcons for pick number 43 and a 4th-round choice this year. That would be pick number 114. Finally, at pick number 43, they took Wan'Dale Robinson. So the Giants pick up 2 extra picks in the 3rd day of this draft. David, let me start with you. What do you think their philosophy was doing that? You heard Joe Schoen talk about it a minute ago. They were looking to move down somewhere, somehow.
I think that they're trying to build this roster and create as many opportunities for that depth to be built when you knew coming into 2022 when Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll were hired with the salary cap being negative. Now when you can spurt out and you can adjust your salary cap by where the range is of where these players are drafted, now you can manipulate the salary cap to your favor to where you're building it, and we still know that come towards training camp, they're going to be veterans that are going to be released as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And anytime you're sitting in that position and you say, hey, look, we have a couple guys we like, but you know what? We feel like they'll be there 4 or 5 picks later on, and if we can accumulate some picks, now it gives you the chance to use those picks as capital to move up later on in this second round if you want to do that. I think, when you look at the fact that, look, the corner Andrew Booth went right before the Giants. Who knows? That may have been somebody they were targeting, and you end up missing out on it. But if you say, hey, we have 3 guys at that pick now that we feel comfortable taking, then at least if one of those guys is gone, then you've got 2 or 3 other guys. But accumulating assets is key. Yep. It gives you flexibility later on if you want to jump up. And to your point, there's obviously salary cap ramifications.
Well, also, quite honestly, David and I had talked even last year because of the COVID situation in NCAA football and allowing these players to get an extra year of eligibility. You've got a lot of guys, super seniors and so forth, that enhanced the tomato patch, if you will, of rounds in this year's draft, to where so many people were telling me the 5th round is like as good as the 4th round this year. So we're talking about very fruitful territory where the Giants added picks.
No doubt about it, and that's where we talk about building that depth of your roster and of your football team. And when you hear in the 4th and 5th rounds that it's going to be loaded with talent that has the potential but needs progress to reach that productivity, that's what gets you excited as a staff and a coaching staff, especially in your first year, because now we know that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, they're speaking the same language, they're speaking the same terminology, they have pinpoint players that they're exactly trying to get, and now they're going to be able to execute it.
Well, one of the other things I think that's very important here, and you mentioned this as well, and Sean, you were talking about it even before the program, because the Giants are showing the ability to move around, is it possible, and I don't know that it is, that they might even try to move up into the bottom of the 2nd round?
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. And, like as Joe Schoen talked about, he's like, look, we still have a lot of needs. I mean, they could use a corner. They need a linebacker. There's still some players out there that I'm sure they would like to add. They would probably like to add some depth and more competition to the interior of this offensive line. So no doubt that's a possibility. The one thing that we have seen, look, Schoen is able when it comes to picking players. But I also think the relationship that you have as a general manager, that's where this comes in to play at the draft, because his relationship with other GMs is what's enabled him to have this in play. Look, hey, here's where we're at. Are you willing to trade? He's had some options for all these things. He is not being stuck with picking a player because he's got a great preparation and he's got a great plan going forward.
Let's talk for a moment about the picks that the Giants gave up to get the extra picks and wind up getting the receiver from Kentucky. They gave up the pick to the Jets, number 38. That was Breece Hall, who it turned out to be the running back out of Iowa State. Certainly the Giants not in high need of a running back, knowing what they already have in their backfield. Let's start with that one, David. Didn't look like they really gave up much there.
No, I don't think Breece Hall was a player that was on their radar in order to get there. Obviously, looking for Saquon to come back with a huge 2022 season. And if there was a running back that the Giants were looking for in depth, I would see that more towards the back half of the 5th, 6th, 7th rounds.
All right, and Sean, we go to the Penn State edge rusher, Arnold Ebiketie. He winds up going at pick 38 to Atlanta. Again, the Giants wound up just getting the premier edge rusher, maybe the premier edge rusher in this draft just yesterday.
Yeah, we're getting Kayvon Thibodeau kind of solves that issue right there. And when you think about it, look, Kayvon Thibodeau, who will probably play the Sam linebacker in the Giants defense, which means that now on the other side, you're going to have Lorenzo Carter and Azeez Ojulari playing on the other side. I think that you're looking pretty good at edge rusher. The one thing that I like to remind people now too is Azeez Ojulari went to Georgia, and we just saw Trayvon Walker go #1 overall. Well, guess who Trayvon Walker had to sit on the bench for because he was out there starting the games? Azeez Ojulari. So he was the starter, which put Trayvon Walker on the bench last year, along with Jermaine Johnson, who was at Clemson or at Georgia last year before he transferred to Florida State. So both of those guys sat behind Ojulari, who now is on the other side of Thibodeau.
Well, you think about it, Lorenzo Carter no longer here, so now you think about moving forward for another depth and another player that can be an edge player at that position as well.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Giants' depth chart, because moving forward, we know that they're going to start getting really busy now in the third round. In fact, it is pick number 67 overall where they are next on the clock, also pick number 81. So 2 picks in the third round for the Giants coming up later on tonight. So they've got a lot of work to do in the war room. Where do you guys start to see them look depth chart-wise, understanding that they'll still go by the value on the board, not necessarily need? But where do you think the fit might be at the position with the value?
I think corner and linebacker absolutely are places. You can never have too many corners. You know, any defensive coordinator in the NFL will tell you they need 3 starting corners because teams play so much 3 wide receiver personnel right now. So you're in your nickel defense a majority of the time. So you can't have enough corners. Certainly linebackers with Blake Martinez coming off the ACL injury. But I also know this, Thomas McGahee, the special teams coach, give me more athletes. Give me more guys that I can use on special teams. Linebackers and corners, those are typically the guys that make up your special teams core.
You know, for me, I would say linebackers as well. You think about Wink Martindale coming here. You've got to have multiple players that can do multiple things at that scheme and have depth at the linebacker position. The other position I'd like to see the Giants identify and address, the tight end position. You think no more Kyle Rudolph, no more Caden Smith. Right now, Ricky Seals is the only one on the roster. I think that's a position where you see going into the second and into the third round, if there's movement, where that tight end could be available, because they're all right now available in the draft.
Folks, I can't ask anything better of these offensive linemen than what about the offensive line? Maybe the Giants could add more depth by taking another offensive lineman on the third day of this draft, or maybe even later tonight.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska. He's a center, tough guy, strong guy, really physical. I think he's actually more physical than Tyler Lindenbaum, who went first round out of Iowa to Baltimore. So when you look at what Cam Jurgens brings to the table, he could be a guy that they could pick up later on in this draft here. And look, he could be the center for the future. I know they brought in John Feliciano from Buffalo, who they're hoping adds a big veteran presence up front. But if you want a guy that's going to do everything for you, ask him to take out the trash, he'll do it too. He's a high motor guy, and I was really impressed with him both at the combine and when you look at his film. He's constantly out pulling in space, so he does a great job at the second level, getting out in front of a lot of the runs.
David?
Jamari Salyer, still out on the board right now.
I heard you talk about him on Sirius. You love that guy.
One of his best friends and his teammate, Andrew Thomas, obviously the starting left tackle for the New York Giants. Versatile, can play both guard positions and the center position. Tough, ground-rooted, loves the game of football, has the football IQ. Interviewed him on Wednesday and coming to this draft. I think he'd be a great piece to this offensive line.
He's a big dude. He can slide down and play tackle. He played left tackle last year and kicked out there, did a nice job, and handled Aiden Hutchinson a couple times too.
Kentucky wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson is expected to join us momentarily, so if you stick around with us, we'd certainly like to hear from him and his excitement about joining the Giants. To continue this discussion, though, about the Giants depth chart, fellas, I'm a little curious about safety, because right now it looks like Julian Love and Xavier McKinney are pretty much going to be the starters at the moment going into the summer. But what if Wink Martindale decides he wants to use a third safety somewhere? I'm not so sure who that guy would be. Could it possibly be a draft pick?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility.
Maybe Brisker from Penn State?
Brisker from Penn State is a possibility, and as we sit here and we continue to go through the board, we'll see. But as I said, when we run and when we look at the system, it takes experience and it takes football IQ to run the system that Wink Martindale runs. That's where I think possibly if you don't see the player that you love in the draft, like we saw earlier in the second round, that's where a veteran can come into play and really take on ownership of that back, where Logan Ryan was.
Well, go ahead. I'm Sean.
Yeah, I thought Logan Ryan was a big part of that, and when he showed up, obviously he solidified a lot of the coverages, a lot of the communication. So that's a big part of it. I think Xavier McKinney can absolutely handle all that. So, for him, obviously just staying healthy and being on the field. But, McKinney, he is so versatile. So I think that gives the Giants a lot of flexibility if they do want to go out and draft a safety, because they can move Xavier all over the place. He can play free safety, strong safety. He can play nickel slot. Last year we saw a lot of times they started games with 3 safeties, and they would just kind of flip-flop and rotate depending on who was in the slot and who was outside.
All right, great stuff. And guess what? A guy who really says there's great stuff going on is WanDale Robinson. He joins us right now. WanDale, Paul Dottino, along with Sean O'Hara and David Deal. Congratulations on being drafted by the Giants in the second round of the 2022 selection process. First thing we got to ask you is, who made the call to you? What was your reaction? And who's around you? Are you with family, friends? Where are you?
Yeah, so I'm at a hotel here in Lexington. A lot of family and friends. I had to get away, so I'm outside. There's a lot of people. It's very loud inside, but it's been a great night. Been a really good night.
WanDale, great to see you again, my man. Congratulations on becoming the newest member of the New York Giants. Take us through the phone call when you heard that the Giants were going to draft you. What was your first thought?
I just looked down at my phone and I saw New York Giants, and I just kind of went blank for a second. Really don't even remember the first half of the conversation. I was just in such shock. I was just really happy and crying a lot, and just really happy to share with my family. So I was just excited.
You know, everybody has a different journey. Obviously, yours started at the University of Nebraska, but you had to make a change, decide to transfer and go through the portal to the University of Kentucky. We know your dad, Dale, is a huge component, played at Western Kentucky as a trainer. Just talk about the journey and what he molded and helped you get to this point today.
He's played a big role. If you know a little bit about our story, he was out of my life for a little bit, for the first 12 years of my life. And just whenever he got home, he just did everything right, and just teaching me the ways to go and how I should go about my life, and just not to go down the wrong path. And so he's just played a big role in getting me here.
WanDale, the first thing anyone's going to think about when they talk about you is speed. More speed and more speed. And I see the smile because you know what that story's about. Tell the folks who haven't seen you play, what can they expect from you? Because we know you can return. We know you can run the ball. You're not just going to be running out for passes.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Running back, receiver, just being all over the field, just being a versatile guy. Making people miss, getting down the field, and just doing a lot of different things for the football team to help us win.
WanDale, I know Giants fans are going to look forward to getting to know you in the near future here. Obviously, you already talked about your dad, Dale. I know he's going to have you in the weight room tomorrow. No doubt you're going to be hang cleaning. You get the deadlifts in.
I'll be working out tomorrow.
Yeah. There's no
tonight with him.
I'm sure you're going to be all jacked up. Of course, you got all that energy. So he's not going to let you rest on your laurels. But there he is right there. He's trying to get in. Tell him to go do some back squats. Listen. I want you to talk to us about who are some of your idols as you were growing up, who are some of the players that you modeled your game after, and when you watch film on receivers in the NFL right now, who's the first guy you're turning on?
Well, growing up, Percy Harvin was my favorite guy. So that was really my guy. But now, just this past year being in the Rams offense, I watched a lot of Cooper Kupp. So that's really the guy that I'll immediately turn on, just seeing the things that he's doing, just the ways that he runs routes, and he gets open. So.
Well, we've heard throughout the NFL, obviously, people talking about Deebo Samuel, his ability to run the football, run the jet sweeps. That's something that you did specifically at the University of Kentucky. We also know when you came out of Kentucky at 2018, when you were Mr. Football, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, they all wanted you to run the football as well. So I think we're all trying to tell everybody out there, don't let size be a factor. When you have the football in your hands, you run angry.
Yeah, right. Hey, as long as they can't tackle you, no matter how big you are.
WanDale, how much interest did the Giants show in you? I mean, you said you were kind of surprised and shocked when the phone call came in today, but when you met with them, I'm sure at some point talked to them, met with them, who did you talk to? What did they want to know about you? And what did you think about the stuff that they were saying to you?
A week before the draft, I had a meeting with the assistant GM and the GM, and at that point, that's when I kind of knew that they were really interested in me, and just really wanted to get everything in my background and just kind of how I grew up and everything like that. So just really just dive into the person like that I am. And obviously they saw everything on film. They just really needed to see the person that I was. So.
All right, WanDale, you got running back in your rearview mirror. You were running back in high school. So I got to ask you, with the ball in your hand, would you rather juke a guy and make him look silly, or would you rather run him over?
I want to make people look silly.
Smart man.
I like making people miss. Yeah.
Well, we're excited to have you here. Welcome to the Giants family.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
WanDale Robinson, thank you so much. Rookie out of Kentucky, second-round pick in the New York Football Giants. We wish you all the best, and again, we'll see you very, very soon.
Yes, sir.
So, fellas, what an effervescent personality, too. And we all know from talking to this Giants administration, the people kind of character guys are going to be very important to what they're doing when they're building this roster.
Yeah, no doubt the culture. I mean, he's talking about he's going to work out tonight. You know, he's not even waiting until tomorrow to get it in. So, you know, he's hungry. You know, he's looking forward to earning it. And he's not going to be one of those guys where you have to chase around to make sure he got his workout in the weight room.
No doubt about it. You know that this is a player that loves football, and he's going to show up ready to play.
Yeah, I think one of the other things you got to keep in mind, folks, is that the versatility factor. Once again, another key factor. We talked about speed a little bit earlier, but versatility. How many times have you heard Shane and Dable talk about the more you can do, want to put guys in all kinds of different places? Another key here.
Absolutely. Versatility, keep you on the field.
All right. Folks, we will be back as the Giants continue to draft tonight. Again, pick number 67 and pick number 81 overall coming up later on in the third round. Following each of those selections, we'll be back here on Big Blue Draft Night Live presented by Verizon. For Sean O'Hara and David Deal, I'm Paul Dottino. Stick around, folks. We'll see you later.